How exactly do you get onto top tier podcast? Hi guys, my name's Deepak Shukla, founder at Pearl M and PR. We're a public relations agency based in the UK, USA, as well as Uganda, serving clients worldwide. And here today, back in day number 19 of 39 days of public relations training, we're here to talk about, you guessed it, how to get onto top tier podcasts. But before we get into it, feel free to click the link in the description below to get access to 11 additional strategies that we will not be sharing in this training. So look, fundamentally, podcasts are an excellent way to increase your exposure. Very briefly, podcasts are still in their growth stages. Podcasts get really active, let's say, listeners who listen with a higher degree of focus because of the length of podcasts. And it's just another medium that's quite convenient for people when it comes to the way that they, let's say, travel to and from work, commutes, holidays, and otherwise. So podcasts are great. If I was to just Google podcast growth 2022, grow significantly in 2022's on-demand audio increases in popularity. So as you can see, podcast growth. Let's see podcast growth statistics in general. Let's just have a look at that. Podcast audience is growing. 41% of the US population reported to have listened to a podcast in the past month, more than 3 times shared. 3 times a share recorded a decade earlier. So as you can see, podcasts are growing. So what you want to do then is identify fundamentally, and there's a couple of ways to do this. You want to, much like the publications that we referred to when it came to Forbes, when it came to Inc. Success or otherwise, you want to look at, I would look at podcast directory, but you can look at top podcasts for business. Let's have a look at that, right? For business, okay? So if we Google that, then you'll get a list of podcasts here. You'll also get lists here, which you can, of course, go and have a look at. You'll also get directory listings there. And you can then also go directly to the platforms themselves. So best platforms for podcasts as an example. And you'll then see a load of places to listen. But you'll have podcasts on Lisbon, podcasts on SoundCloud, podcasts on Podomatic. You'll also, of course, have podcasts on iTunes and other places. So if we go to, for example, podcasts, iTunes, you'll now see Apple Podcasts. Let's have a look, discovering podcasts. Let's just open up some of these sites. So Shareable, this is podcast trends, and maybe ads in podcasts more accepted, a better quality is required. Podcast events and live stream events are growing, which is fantastic. So we've got some of the confirmation there. Top business podcasts. We've got a list of, let's go all the way to 12 actually. We've got a list of, it continues. These will be other industries, I presume. Top 24. This must be this is page by page and instead perhaps, but as you can see, there's a bunch of big podcasts here. We now go on to Apple Podcasts. Let's just have a look if it's in here. Nope. Discovering podcasts. Let's see if podcasts. So now let's try podcast categories, and you've got Spotify as well. Genre. Let's go to iTunes. Here we go. I need to find the link again, as you can see here. But fundamentally, there are a ton of ultimately podcasts that you can go out and go after. So let me just pause while I look for the podcast category for iTunes. And here we go. I was finally able to find it. So as you can see, there are tons of categories. If we dived into, for example, entrepreneurship, had a look at what's in here, had a look at the EOS life, you can then start to Google these podcasts and basically build up a list of potential podcasts. As it says, we do not have iTunes here. This is because I'm recording from my Windows device, but fundamentally, you could Google, couldn't find that page, search podcasts, here we go, top podcasts, categories, here we go, originals and exclude, let's go to see all. This is Spotify now. and we could go to business and technology. It doesn't appear to be working, but yeah, look, Inspire Your Success podcast. You could Google that. And then it's really a case of, again, following the look. What I'm trying to communicate is, depending upon which one, you could follow the route of what we discussed with Inc., Entrepreneur, and Forbes, which is identifying the, here we go, Inspire Your Success. This is an example. And we could go to his podcast, work with me, and really try and build a relationship with this man here, who I don't know who he is, but he's got featured guest interviews, which is fantastic, and really just go down the route of trying to identify podcasts that would fit what you're looking for, and then also furthermore reaching out to these said people and seeing if you could become an appropriate guest. So there you go. In a rambly nutshell, are some insights for how you could fundamentally start identifying podcasts that could become a really good fit for ultimately your brand. So there you have it, guys. This is some insights into how to get onto top tier podcasts.